The axe came down with a thundering crack, splitting the frozen log clean in two. Elias Brandt wiped his brow and exhaled steam into the frosty morning air. The woods around his cabin, massive cedar trunks and whispering pines, stood silent except for the echo of his work. Life on the colony world of Norvac 3 was cold, lonely, and harsh, just the way he liked it. The giant human lumberjack stood nearly 7 feet tall, muscles honed from years of felling trees for off-world shipments. His nearest neighbor was 20 kilometers away. The only company he had was the groan of trees and the distant cry of wind over the peaks. Until the day he heard crying. At first, he thought it was the wind whistling oddly through the trees. But as he raised his axe again, he heard it, a soft, high-pitched whimper.
Childlike.
Fragile. He set the axe aside. "Hello," he called out, his deep voice rolling through the snow. No answer, just another faint sob, coming from the shadowed edge of the treeline. Elias trudged closer, his heavy boots crunching through frost. Then, through the mist of his breath, he saw movement. 2 tiny figures huddled beside a broken stump. They were no taller than his knee, their silvery skin glowing faintly blue in the morning light. Thin, translucent wings hung limp and tattered from their backs. Their eyes, large and violet, stared up at him in terror. They looked like children carved from starlight. "By the stars," Elias muttered, kneeling slowly. "You're not from around here, are you?" The smaller of the 2 clutched the other's hand and squeaked something in a language of lilting clicks. The other, the older twin, judging by the tone, shook her head quickly. Elias could see one of them trembling violently, her wing bent at an odd angle. "Easy now," he said, removing his thick gloves. His hands were like slabs of stone, yet his movements were gentle. "I'm not gonna hurt you." The older twin blinked up at him, then pointed to her sister's wing and said something that sounded like "Zira hurt." "You're hurt, huh?" he murmured. "All right, let's get you out of the cold first." Elias carried them both cupped carefully in his palms back to his cabin. The twins, delicate as glass figurines, huddled together as he set them on the rough wooden table near the fire. They flinched when he struck the match, the sudden light making their skin shimmer in iridescent hues. He poured warm water into a tiny tin cup and tore one of his shirts into thin strips. As he reached toward the injured twin, she squealed and backed up, pressing against her sister's side. "I'm trying to help," Elias said softly. "You'll freeze if I don't." The older one hesitated, then gave a tiny nod, placing herself protectively in front of her sister. He cleaned the small wound on the bent wing, his massive fingers trembling with care. The girl winced but didn't cry out. When he finished wrapping the torn membrane, she gazed up at him, violet eyes glimmering. "Thank you," she said slowly, her accent heavy but clear. Elias's eyebrows lifted. "You speak Standard?" She nodded weakly. "Little bit. I learned from humans." "What's your name?" he asked. "I am Lyra. My sister, Zira." "Lyra and Zira," Elias repeated with a grin. "I'm Elias Brandt. You two can call me Eli." Zira made a small chirping sound that might have been laughter. By nightfall, they had eaten scraps of bread dipped in honey, which the twins devoured with awe. Elias learned that they were from a crashed survey vessel belonging to the Canari, a race of small, winged beings rarely seen outside the inner systems. Their ship had been shot down by raiders a week ago. They'd been hiding in the cold forest ever since. "Raiders?" Elias frowned, sitting by the fire. "You mean those Vark pirates still pokin' around the frontier?" Lyra nodded. "They hunt survivors. Want their cores." She tapped her chest, where a faint crystal glowed beneath her skin. "Energy stones. Worth much to bad men." Elias's jaw tightened. He knew the type. Vark pirates stripped wrecks for anything valuable, including living beings. Well, he rumbled, anyone comes near my woods, they'll wish they hadn't. That night, the twins slept curled in a soft nest of cotton cloth beside the fire. Elias stayed awake long after, staring at the frozen window. He'd sworn off helping anyone after the war. Too much blood. Too many graves. But as he looked at the two tiny shapes breathing peacefully by the fire, something old and heavy in his heart began to thaw. At dawn, the peace shattered. The hum of engines cut through the silence. Elias's head snapped up as shadows swept across the snow outside. 3 dark shapes descended through the treetops, hovercrafts painted in rusted gray, with jagged insignias. Vark raiders. The twins woke screaming. Stay down, Elias barked. He grabbed his plasma axe, meant for felling trees, but deadly enough for men, and stepped onto the porch. The lead raider, a tall reptilian brute, sneered. Human, we tracked our quarry to this sector. 2 Canary girls. You seen them? Elias spat into the snow. Can't say I have. Maybe you're lost. The alien's eyes narrowed. You lie. He raised a pulse rifle. We'll search your dwelling. Elias's reply was a blur of motion. The axe swung, glowing white-hot as it cleaved the weapon in 2. The blast sent steam hissing through the snow. Bad idea, Elias growled. The raiders opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked across the clearing, searing into trees. Elias ducked behind a stump, then charged forward with a roar that echoed like thunder. His axe struck one raider square in the chest. Armor shattered. Sparks burst. Another lunged, claws flashing, but Elias grabbed him by the neck and slammed him into the frozen ground hard enough to crack the ice. The last one fled toward the hovercraft. Elias hurled his axe, spinning, flaming through the air. It struck true, splitting the engine housing in half. The ship erupted in blue fire, lighting up the forest. Smoke and silence followed. Elias turned back toward the cabin. The twins peeked through the cracked door, eyes wide as moons. He knelt, chest heaving. You two all right? Lyra nodded, trembling. Zira flew weakly to his shoulder, hugging his neck with tiny arms. Eli brave, she whispered. By the next morning, the smoke had cleared. The twins sat by the fire while Elias repaired his axe. What will you do now? He asked quietly. Lyra looked down. We cannot go home. Ship gone. There's a human outpost 2 days north, Elias said. I can get you there. They'll send word to your people. The twins looked at each other, uncertain. Then Lyra said softly, You help us. Why? Elias paused, the firelight glinting off his scarred face. Because once, someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. I figure it's my turn to pay it forward. She tilted her head. You have kind heart, giant human. He chuckled. Don't tell anyone. Ruins my reputation. The journey north was slow but steady. Elias built a tiny perch on a shoulder for them to rest as he trudged through snowfields. They told him stories of their world, floating gardens of crystal and silver rivers under twin suns. In return, he told them of Earth's forests and blue skies, of the simple beauty of chopping wood and hearing nothing but birds. At night, they sang softly in their alien tongue, a sound like wind through glass. Elias found himself smiling more than he had in years. When they finally reached the outpost, human Marines were waiting to escort them to orbit. Lyra turned to him at the gate, eyes glistening. We will tell our people about the giant of the woods, she said. The one with hands of stone but heart of fire. Zira pressed something into his palm, a tiny shard of glowing crystal. For you. So you never be alone. Elias swallowed hard. You take care of each other, all right?" They nodded. Then, in a flutter of silver light, they rose into the sky and vanished aboard the shuttle. Weeks later, Elias sat once more by his fire, the shard glowing faintly on his mantle. The forest was quiet again, but it felt different, alive. Sometimes, at dusk, he swore he could hear tiny voices on the wind, laughing like bells. He smiled to himself and raised his mug in a silent toast. "To you two little lights," he murmured. "You gave this old lumberjack something worth believing in again." And far above, among the stars, two tiny hearts glowed brighter than ever, forever grateful to the giant who had saved them.